Good morning, everyone. We will get started in 1 second. We're just going to let some people come in. I'm DaSilva. I'm the Director of Operations for the Canadian Support Workers Association and the Ontario PSW Association. We're going to be going through some resume strategies over the next hour and hopefully have some time. But we will make some time for questions. Today's presentation is going to be basically a presentation at PowerPoint going through some general strategies and issues that we've encountered when working with members to improve their resumes and to improve their chances of securing employment. The focus of the presentation this morning is going to be on building a resume for personal support workers and using and focusing on how to basically customize resumes for the specific jobs that you're applying for. And hopefully you can speak better than I can. So if you don't, with all that said and done, I will begin to share my screen, if that's all right. And so go resumes. Okay. So as I said, this is the Ontario PSW Association Resume Building Strategies. And we're going to go through the slides just one by one. And we'll, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them into the chat. And we'll do our best. We have staff on the background that will be able to answer questions as we go forth. There's lots of questions. And just for preface, there's no one right way to write a resume. We're going to go through some of the different strategies, but this is just a general overview. And we can ask questions after. So the first thing about resumes that I think everyone understands and everyone encounters is that they're extremely important, but they can be really, really hard to write. It's extremely hard for a lot of us to basically brag about ourselves. And it's extremely hard to brag about ourselves specifically when applying to a job, and how does one focus in on that? So it's really hard to understand, what do you want to put into a resume and what do you want to leave out? This leads to a lot of common problems. Now, here at the Ontario PSW Association, we work with a large spectrum of individuals looking for help with resumes. There are lots of different resumes. Many of them are great. However, many of them have issues, including ones I've done in the past. And these are some of the errors that we encounter quite often. Number one I encounter often is making the resume too long. Oftentimes we'll see resumes that can be 3, 4, 5 pages. And these are for the individuals who have absolutely, obviously, no issue with bragging about themselves. They're very proud of their achievements. They want to brag, and that's great. The problem is that a too long resume is too long, and HR officials and hiring managers don't have time to necessarily read 4 or 5 pages. The other side of that is making them too short. If you make your resume too succinct or too short, it demonstrates to the employer that you're sort of not really interested in this position. You're just hoping that they just need someone on the floor. The next thing that ties into the first one is including irrelevant information. This is going to be a theme throughout this presentation. Knowing your audience is going to be key to having a successful resume. So making sure that you include relevant information in your resume is important. The one thing I'd also like to stress is that there's no one resume that fits all job application. So we're going to be talking about the need to constantly be rewriting, updating, and the need to specialize each resume for each job that you're applying for. This is a bit of work, but it is important work if you're wanting to be successful in this. That ties into including the irrelevant information. No one in industry right now is terribly interested if, for example, you have a great interest in skiing or an interest in tennis, or if you're a part of a basketball league. Wonderful achievements, great job, but they don't relate to the job that you're applying for, so there's really no need to include them in. It confuses them, and there's no point. Tying to this is focusing in on the wrong achievements. We encounter a number of times when people are extremely proud of their academic and professional achievements, and they rightly should be, but sometimes that pride can actually become a barrier to employment if you're using it too much. So if you're, for example, looking to do a PSW position and you wanted to provide personal care, and in your previous job, let's just say this is your second career entering a PSW, and in your previous job you were an administrator and a manager. Including management strengths in a PSW resume generally is not necessarily going to make you successful, because the PSW is not a management role. It is a public service, personal care, frontline healthcare role. So including the ability, for example, to manage huge numbers of staff has no bearing on the PSW role. So that would be an example of an irrelevant fact, an achievement that is not correct. It would have play no relevance into your resume construction. Spelling and grammar errors, these are profound. Everyone makes them. No one is perfect, including anybody in this call and anyone who I've ever spoken with in my entire life. Everyone makes mistakes, including when you're writing a resume. We always make sure that you have your resume proofread, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail. It's going to be followed up with. No contact information. Believe it or not, this is something that we encounter a great deal. We have people that will email resumes and they only include their name and email address. This is not enough information for a recruiter to make any sort of assessment on. The reason why that's not sufficient is because the recruiter has no idea where you live. And while that might not sound important on the offhand, it's extremely important if you're trying to staff for areas that may be more rural or areas in a specific town. The recruiters really are not impressed if, for example, you try to trick your way into a position saying, yes, I can work, no problem in that city. And then you get the job and then you tell the recruiter, I can come to work, but I have nowhere to live. Then you're not going to get that job. The recruiter will not help you find a place to live and you're going to have to start again. You can't trick them. There's no point. Again, tying that into is the resume written for a different position. We often get resumes here for review at the OPSWA and the OPSWA and the Canadian Support Workers Association with people asking why my resume is not working for a personal support worker job. In cases like this, it ties back into focusing on the wrong achievements, including irrelevant information. When you look at those resumes, you'll find that the people that apply for PSW's jobs might be, for example, a nurse or a physician in another country, and very, very proud of that. That is not necessarily going to help you get a job as a personal support worker because you're writing a resume for a nurse, not a PSW. That's fine, but you don't expect to be employed there. So those are some of the basic common problems that we common problems. Page 2 of these, and I've already alluded to this earlier, is using one resume for all jobs. This never works. Well, it might work, but it's not going to be necessarily a great way of success. It's efficient, yes. It gives you an enormous ability to expand outwards. You can post it on LinkedIn. That's great. You're out there. That's wonderful. It doesn't necessarily increase your odds of employment. And if it does get you a job, it might not get you a job that you necessarily want because your resume and the job might not match, and you might have an employer that just needs someone on the ground. And that leads to very short-term job dissatisfaction. And that doesn't work. Couple more things. I've already said no contact information provided. I'm going to add that one in again at the end. Please make sure you put in where you live. The city is necessary. You don't need to put in your mailing address, but you need to include your name, what city you live in, and your phone number and email. And we'll talk a bit about emails. That's at the end. Do not include lots of inappropriate fonts and graphics. Healthcare takes their role seriously in human resources there. They're not looking for pretty embellished resumes, which includes there is no need to put your photograph. Different places on Earth require employees to have photographs attached to resumes. In Canada, we do not do that, so just do not include your photograph. It is not necessary. But including your name, email, phone number, and your city is an absolute necessity if you want to be successful. So the really important thing, and many people, for those who've never built a resume, is to identify where to start. And that blank page can be extremely daunting. First thing we recommend is you take that blank page and you lay it out in 4 basic categories. One being your resume header, again, contact information, include your name, the city you live in or a town or region, or basically the region that you wish to be employed in, where you can be employed in, email address, phone number, basic information. Make sure your name stands out a little bit bigger in boldness or a little bit higher in graphics. The resume summary is just something we're going to in a few minutes. This is a paragraph about who you are, your achievements, and more importantly, we're going to be going to the second, but how does you need to relate this to the job posting? And we have an example to show you. The next summary is education and training. Very simply listing all your education and training from the most modern going down into the most to your earliest that's relevant. Just an FYI, we do get resumes We don't need to know about, employers don't really need to know about primary school, high school necessary, not really. It's really the post-secondary. Unless you're early and your high school is your first, then that's fine. High school, then your PSW certificate, and then that's great. Work history is important. Again, just listing the places that you worked in the past, including start and end dates, and you can use for the new PSWs. No harm in putting your placement in there as work experience. It is work experience. That's the whole point of it. So maybe not give you a year, but you can put in that you've done that placement as part of your work experience. This is a huge area that a lot of people miss, and that is a huge part of resume writing. It is just for the. I'm going to go back to the previous screen. This is nothing fancy. You just write them out: resume header, resume summary, and it's going to. So our basic resume will have 4 points, 4 sections in there. So once you have that basically lined out, do you really want to focus on customizing your resume for the job that you wish to apply for? So here we're going to be using a sample job. This is from a company out in Southwest Ontario. Great company, really good to work for. I'm not going to give the name, nothing against them. It's just, I just used this one and I've edited it. So the sample job that we're going to be applying for this resume is for a personal support worker in a long-term care facility. This is a full-time position. So very quickly, the sample job is support and embrace our resident-centered social culture. And basically, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically indicating that you have to read this out. Work as part of a key member of our long-term care multidisciplinary teams, understand individual rights, needs, personal support workers, foster exemplary relationships. Read this section out to the many times over when you're trying to apply for your job. This is going to give you the key words that they're looking for in a job when you're looking to apply for a job. So if you look at this, there are some keywords here that I would encourage you to look at. And we will look at the next screen. And this is what some of the keywords are. So we've gone ahead and when you look at your job summary or the job description that they're applying for, go and look for some keywords that you think that are important. Now, they might not be right, but they're the ones that you think, and that's fine. For the benefit of this presentation, we're going to use, we've focused on the following words. So if we look at the previous one, this is just a general thing, and then you take your highlighter and you highlight keywords. Some of the keywords are usually words to describe activities, verbs, adjectives. So some keywords, for example, are support and embrace, understand residents' individual needs. It can be sentences. Advocate for residents to actively participate in decisions about their care, deliver holistic care focusing on flexible living and quality of life, caring and respectful attitude towards our residents, understand physical, mental, and emotional demands of the PSW role. So there's other words you can highlight here. You can highlight companionship, activities. There's whatever you really want to focus on in this case. The reason why you do this is because it tells you a lot about the job that you're applying for. It tells you a lot about what this company is looking for. So if you look at this, for example, job description, what can we tell about the culture of the company that we're looking at here? The company has mentioned several times individual needs, advocate for residents to support their personal care, delivering holistic care focusing on flexible living and quality of life. Support residents is one here. Oh, my bad. Support residents. PSW know our residents, quickly able to identify and report changes, all things that are important. Caring and respectful attitude. And lastly, understand the physical, mental, and emotional demands of the PSW role. What I'm seeing here, when I'm looking at this job, is that this company wants a PSW that really understands the role of a personal support worker. And reading between the lines here, I'm not seeing a terrible company at all. I'm seeing an excellent company that does want to prioritize patient rights, and especially looking at the physical, looking at the individual flexibility, flexible lifestyles that people need. Flexibility is needed in order to provide quality of life. That's kind of the culture that they're looking for. This is very much a demonstration of a patient-focused, patient-centered approach. So you want to keep that in mind when you're doing your resume. Excuse me. The last thing I'm reading here is understand the physical, mental, and emotional demands of the PSW role. This is a huge, huge sentence. What this sentence is indicating to us is that company wants a professional, certified, licensed personal support worker that really has done this for a while and understands that this is a hard job. So when you're doing your resume, you may want to focus on elements, for example, that you're in the habit of providing, that you fully understand. For example, as a PSW, I'm fully prepared to handle all the physical, mental, and emotional demands that this role has to offer. That would be a perfect sentence to give, to respond, for example, or to put into a resume. Excuse me again, I apologize. So looking at the resume summary, so this is part two. The first section is your resume header, which includes your contact information. Second section here is your resume summary. And for this resume, we're going to be looking at, we've created the list of words that we wanted to use. And for example, we've selected them here: support, advocate, understanding, individual needs, quality of life, caring, and respectful. So for the benefit of this presentation, we've made up an applicant, and we're going to call the applicant Mr. Ian. We'll call him me. And I'm going to be the PSW, and I'm a PSW and have worked for 3 years in a retirement home and would like to join your team. That's my current resume summary. That's what I think is going to be good. Is it good? Not really. What I want to do is incorporate some of the words that were in this job description into my resume summary. And let's have a look at what I've changed this to. So instead of saying I'm a PSW and have worked for 3 years in a retirement home and would like to join your team, you could put long-term care, whatever applies. You might want to change that to I am a fully trained and OPSWA certified PSW with extensive experience supporting individual needs, which clicks this one, and my retirement home clients with care and respect, ensuring the highest quality of life. That sentence in that point was able to include 1, 2, 3 different areas that show up in this job description right away. Already you're showing the recruiter and the programs that read these resumes that you're reading the job description, you're understanding it, and that you're trying to make sure that you accommodate that job description. Education and training, again, is the next important thing. We can ask questions about this resume summaries after, of course, but I'm just going to get through the next part of this. So resume, education and training. So the next issue is listing all the education and training, starting from as far back as is relevant to the job. So as I said earlier, when you're going to be doing your listing education, so this is section 3 of your resume. So you have resume header, which is where your contact information is, resume summary, which is this part, and we can go into that in greater detail. And the next part of your resume is going to be education and training. And here you're going to want to make sure, as we said, to go back as far as relevant to your job. There's no harm in including all professional education, but highlight the ones that are relevant. For example, let's have a look at this resume. This person, Mr. Ian, include the name of the school where you were there. Durham College. I earned a PSW certificate in September 2019, and I completed that in May 2020. Then I had my St. John's Ambulance First Aid. This isn't me, by the way. This is just a phantom. I'm not PSW. A St. John's Ambulance First Aid, which I took, and it expires in July 23. And then we have here, for example, some of you have Crisis in Prevention Institute and VCI, which would have been completed in June 22. These are great examples of education and training that you can put into one category. And these relate to, they don't need to necessarily relate to the job, but you want to make sure that you have the qualifications here that the job wants. You can also put that if you have additional qualifiers, if they're relevant. Now, many people would be more than happy to say, I have a big BA in business management, and I have the BA in that, if this is your second career. So is that relevant to the PSW job? No. Should you include it here? I wouldn't. It doesn't do any advantage to securing that position. And if you necessarily put down education that doesn't necessarily relate to the job you're applying for, that sends mixed messages to the human resources team, telling them that, is this person looking to one day apply for a PSW role, or are they looking to become an administrator? Because there's different ways to approach that in those different job environments. So you want to make sure that the education training, again, is relevant to the job that you're applying for. There is no point in putting in that, for example, you have, as I said, any sort of a degree that doesn't relate to this specifically. If you do have medical education, even that might not necessarily be helpful in securing a PSW position, because again, you need to ensure that your medical your background relates to the job that you're applying for. Again, the last section is work history. This is the final section where you show what you've done in the past. This is pretty much the where we get a lot of different issues. People are more. There's a few different areas. Okay, so for example, in this case, the individual that they put down, they have Chartwell residence. This is in Whitby, Ontario. This was a placement. They began on June 20th and they went to May 2020. So in this case, the PSW, Mr. Ian, did a PSW placement for June 20th. So that was the first experience this person had. You put down the name of the place, the city, the job role, and then the dates that you did it. The next one, I did this in reverse, so apologize. It actually should be Fairview Lodge first. So my most latest job is the one I put first. And then in this case, the Mr. Ian was at Fairview Lodge Long-Term Care, again in Whitby, Ontario. I served as a personal support worker, Mr. Ian rather, from May 2020 until November 2023. And then that just gives you the history. So forgive me, but that should be your most recent to your earliest job to show down. For those who are doing second careers in the personal support worker world or coming in from outside of Canada, again, you're fine to put in the last job you had outside of Ontario. There's no problem with that. This applies largely to some of our international community who are working as personal support workers, getting ready for the night collects. So you want to make sure that you do include there that you are seeking a PSW role, but my education is a nurse, an internationally educated nurse. No problem. Last but not least, this is the most important part, and you can never do this too often. Proofreading. This is when you separate your friends from your fake friends, because you need to find someone that you trust, that you know is intelligent and capable to read this resume and spend some time editing it. So once you've completed, this is where I said you want to make sure that there are absolutely no mistakes going over this resume. So you want to make sure there's no spelling errors. You want to make sure the dates are right. You want to make sure that all the formatting matches, okay? So you don't want to have different colors of fonts, for example, or different types of shapes of fonts. You want a standard professional resume. This is healthcare. This is not being employed in some sort of creative capacity. So you want to make sure that you follow a relatively conservative format. The resume ideally should be between 1 and 2 pages in maximum, including one is a bit short, 1.5 to 2 pages is probably good for a resume. And again, I'm going to put this in here. You want to make sure your contact information is clearly visible. We receive a lot of resumes from individuals who are confused as to why they're not getting any sort of callbacks, any interest, and the resume just includes their email and name, and HR teams are not going to spend the time to follow up and necessarily find out where you live and invest the energies in looking you up. They're going to pass because they're going to pass. So in short, that's it. Is there any questions? And I'm going to go back over some of the strategies in a second. If so, the other thing I wanted to just go back over really ties into doing your identity and your job descriptions. You really want to make sure, as I said again, that you do match up these wordings the best you can. This is the key thing. So the other reason why you want to match these, this is such an important thing, is to prepare your resume for the analysis from the different HR departments. So I'm coming back to this slide to describe and to inform how does HR sort and select resumes in Ontario for healthcare. Now, this is a huge question, and it is extremely important that you listen in terms of understanding the process. So every different long-term care has a slightly different approach to how they hire. Some long-term care facilities or even retirement home companies, caregiving companies, some of them use large human resources computerized intake machines. What these machines do, or what these computer programs do, is very straightforward. They are programmed to analyze resumes as they come in and to match the keywords in your resume to the keywords that they have in their job description. This is the reason why you want to make sure that if you're applying for larger or medium-sized companies, that you very carefully match, excuse me this morning, that you very carefully match the information in your job description to what you have on your resume. It would be irrelevant, and this sounds strange, but if the company is a larger company, and I can't speculate on who that would be, but most larger companies will use a human resource software program. And if your resume does not match those necessary wordings, your resume will never be seen by a human, ever. It will simply be cataloged and sent, and you will be rejected. That is not a comment on you writing a bad resume. That's what's going to happen, is that the program is not selecting your resume because you didn't write the right resume for the right job. That is the key element that we really want to make sure everyone here understands and really, really put that into place. For smaller companies, you're going to be submitting resumes to an individual. Now, those will be indicated on your human resource on the job posting itself. If there is an individual, you want to make sure, again, that you follow this rule and match the jobs to the job wording, the resume wording to the job posting that you have. This is important because if you were to, for example, like we did some strategies, send out lots of different resumes to lots of different people, the same resume to hundreds of employers, an employer knows that that's a generic resume. As a human resource person, and I'm trying to staff, imagine when trying to staff for people that are patients in a long-term care, I want someone that's going to take this job seriously. And I also want someone that's going to show my office, the human resource office, just a little bit of respect. And getting a resume that's just been thrown together with lots of errors, that's not showing the department any respect. It's also telling the human resource that you don't really take them seriously. That's a very bad approach when you're looking for employment or even trying to seek new employment or additional employment. You must treat all human resource individuals with respect, and a big part of that is writing the resume to match what they're looking for. It is a clear demonstration to that human resources and to the hiring manager that you're taking the position seriously, and again, you're taking their clients seriously. So I just wanted to go back to that element. The computerized language requirements in the programming is what you need to do in order to get your resume selected. We're happy to provide any guidance on this, but we deal with this quite a lot. We have a question. Okay. I'm going to read this out if I may. This is from everyone. I'm a former engineer who in semi-retirement have obtained my PSW certification. I now want to work part-time as a PSW. Should I Should I not include some reference to my previous life at all? I don't want to mislead the employer, and they might need this gray hair woman who is not going to be working with them for the next 20 years. Excellent question. Okay. The key word is relevance. Okay. So you absolutely, in the case like engineering, it's a completely separate role from PSWs. This is a complete difference. So that's a good question. You can absolutely put down that you did engineering in the past, and you can put down your job experiences in engineering. The trick is going to be trying to connect some of the things you did in engineering. Let me just see here. Some of the elements in engineering that you would have done that might relate to that job position. So if I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, TJ, engineers and PSWs, they're pretty separate jobs. Engineering's build things, they do calculations, spanning bridges and all that. PSWs do personal care. But PSWs and engineers share the need to be flexible, and they both work extremely long hours, which tends to be what I understand about engineers, having gone to school with them for a number of years. PSWs understand, and engineers understand the needs of having some flexibility in life. Working as an engineer, you are, for example, might be working under tight deadlines and under high stress. That would be something that you might want to include. If there's anything that if you're an engineer, for example, that worked with clients that you were doing with a private firm, what elements in client care or client service delivery could you transfer over to the PSW role? Those are concepts of relevant skill sets that are transferable from one industry to another. You absolutely can discuss your life, but it needs to be in the context of what that brings to that team. So in engineering, where my head goes as an engineer is I'm someone who is intelligent, and I'm someone who can think quickly, and I can solve complex problems. Can I focus that in here? Yes, you can. I can support and embrace my residents because I am used to solving complex problems and I understand the physical, mental, and emotional demands of a PSW role. I'm not sure if that's helpful, but yes, you should be able to. Oh, my sample job, sorry. So in general, you really want to make sure that the resume is, sorry. I apparently have stopped sharing my screen. Oh, there we go. So are there any questions that I can help with? Has anyone been having problems finding jobs of late? The job market in Ontario is changing for personal support workers, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Please feel free to use the chat. I'm just trying to get out of this share video. The other thing, actually, if I can go on, TJ, the other thing you want to make sure is regarding age. You want to be. This is where we get into a balance of rights issues. You do not have to disclose an age in an interview at all. Also, don't be hesitant. PSWs come in all age groups and sizes, so you want to make sure that that they'll understand that if that you may not be there for the next 20 years. I mean, who will be? It's one of those things, but we don't know. But I think you want to be mindful of that. You want to frame your experience as being supportive and helpful. And you really want to show that experience as being you're a mature person, someone who's mature and understands stresses. And I think that would be, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I hope so. Some other questions that we get typically are references about whether or not I should include references in a resume. This is a really an interesting point. We see a wide range of references here at the OPSWA. Many people have, in fact, some people have half a page of references, which is great. We're thrilled. There's also in different parts of the world, you usually are required to submit some sort of portfolio, which includes route letters of reference. That's not necessarily going to be what's going to do it in Ontario. So what you normally would put on the bottom of your resume is will provide references on demand. No problem. It's just one of those things that the employer knows, and the employer will connect with you should they be interested in you as an employee, and we'll reach out to you to get those references to us. In general, though, the real strategy though to writing a resume is going to be the need to customize each resume to each individual position. The current demand for PSWs is extremely high, but it doesn't mean that just because demand is high that you're going to be able to walk into any job you want. Employers are getting more strict with what they want to do, and there's changes coming down the line from the federal government, from the provincial government about what requirements are going to be needed, for example, that are coming through in different industries in Ontario right now. So if there are no other questions, unless I'm missing something, we can give everyone back another 20 minutes of their day and we can leave it there. So thank you everyone for coming. If you have any questions at all, this was a very straightforward, and I'm sorry if it was somewhat succinct, but for those of you who are in attendance that require, or anyone who listens to this in the future that requires some specific outreach, please contact info@opswa.com for more information. You can be directed. If you're having problems writing a resume and you need additional assistance and you're a member of the association, please visit and please contact the info@OPSWA, or even better, contact DaSilva@opswa.com. And if someone could put in my email, that would be great. And then we can do some direct work. Yeah, thank you so much. We can do direct work. I help a number of our members do resumes one-on-one, hopefully to help them get some positions. But it was really a pleasure seeing everyone here today, and we hope this has been a fruitful day. And kindest regards, and thank you so much for coming.